not
Yeah,
gonna.
I'm comfortable with that.
So, you were just telling me you'd gone to Karachi and started to experience like a beautiful reception. That was the only word we could come up with, and we quite sum it up. What was your next steps?
So then we went to Karmasha, which is the kind of one of the big capital cities of the revolution, also known as Al-Qamishli in Arabic, but mainly the regime side call it Al-Qamishli. But the Kurds call it, and everyone with the revolution call it Karmasha. Again, really beautiful, warm reception. So I think I've never been hugged more in my life. And it wasn't
very big on the hugs.
Yeah, and so it brings me back to this thing that I'd read. So there was, after the Iraq War, Iraq suddenly had the internet, and it pretty much broke down the infrastructure because suddenly every Iraqi could use the internet. There was a very famous kind of blogger called Shalash. He signed his always blog post Shalash the Iraqi. He told kind of humorous, kind of like very kind of raunchy, witty, political, satirical stories, and it's just recently been published. Basically, the only way it was preserved was like loads of students in Iraq collected them, printed them off, and collected them. It was then translated and published recently into English. It's a really beautiful chapter, and I think of all the internationals who'd gone to Rojava when I think of this chapter, and about an American soldier who gets knocked out when his Humvee explodes. He then gets dragged in by this Iraqi Hajia, like this Iraqi mum, who then just smothers him with love. And obviously, coming from America, where again we talked about how culture and society and community has been eroded, in especially UK and even America massively. He's just suddenly just like absolutely in love with the warmth and Shalash Iraqi even notes that, this is a common in Western cultures where people are more reserved, or now more reserved, told that they're reserved, told that they have to be reserved and cut off and alienated. That he goes full Iraqi. So he starts dressing in dishasha and throwing stones at American tanks, going Yankees go home. And then he changes his name from something American to like an Iraqi name, and he kind of calls her mum, and he follows her around the house. And all the other bitchy aunties and neighbours start like cussing her out, saying, "Oh, you've got this young, pretty American boy." But he just falls in love, and I think a lot of internationalists felt that.
Yeah.
This contrast from coming from societies where, again, like I said, this idea of community had been eroded, where the working class had been in defeat, where there's so much alienation, to suddenly being a part of something with just love around and acceptance.
I can think of more specifically former American soldiers than I can count that had that exact experience.
Yeah.
Like, going from that mentality to having Kurdish tattooed all over them, and like, they gave their whole hearts to it.
Yeah. And when we think of attachment in early childhood is so important, and that feeling of being loved and feeling safe. And to put all that on mums, especially mums in today's society where they are being pulled by like the cost of living crisis, by housing crisis, by these TikTok trends of how motherhood should be, expectations that women should have it all. It's very hard for one person to provide that.
Yeah.
But if you've got a whole community providing that, more well-adjusted and happier the child will be, because they're going to feel attached, they're going to feel loved. I think that's what every international felt, that shock of love. It's almost like a love shock rather than a culture shock.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another thing I noticed was, for the first time ever as a woman, I felt really respected. The men there, regardless of age, looked at me and listened to me with the same amount of respect as they would have an older male colleague or friend. And Abdullah Öcalan wrote this beautiful piece about reconstructing the modern man, and I think it blows Tate and Peterson out the water.
Abdullah Öcalan
he's a Kurdish political leader who's been in prison in Turkey, and he inspired a lot of the Rojava Revolution, the thoughts, the thinking, the idea, and he came up with this idea of democratic confederalism, which I really like and support. Giving people the autonomy in their communities to decide what's right for them.
And that's sort of the ideology that they tried to implement.
Yeah. He also came up with genealogy, which is like the scientific liberation of women, but not in the way that certain feminists in the West would perceive it. So, this idea of cancel culture and things like that is complete opposite. It's about, I remember going to Jinhua, which is like the women's only village. A lot of women who've gone through a lot of trauma under ISIS set up this collective village together. Men are only allowed, but only during certain times in the day. And they have their own shop, they have their own like kiln oven and things like that. One of the women in Jinhua said it's not about saying one gender or which gender is better than the other. It's about healing the relationship between all genders.
That's not even a concept here, but it's just so.
Exactly.
Again, I'm just gonna keep saying beautiful. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can say beautiful as many times, but again, it comes back to what Abdul-Najim said about reconstructing the modern man. So obviously Peterson and Tate like, modern feminism done this and women are like that, and you have to hustle or grind or and it's like Erdogan's coming out saying the modern man looks out for himself and his community. He's not just an individual. He comes from his community. He's respectful to everyone within his community. He looks after the women in his community as much as he looks after the men, and it really challenges and it does fill that void that we talked about earlier about the left not really having a response to Peterson or Tate and these kind of snake oil salesmen who are trying to get sell these alienated young men happiness. They're leading them totally down the wrong path. But over there, the men are so fulfilled and happy and comfortable, and they respect women as their
They
comrades.
look up to them.
Yeah. Yeah, and they wear the floral scarf because they're so confident in their masculinity. Their masculinity is not threatened by wearing a scarf with flowers on it, or sometimes being shouted at by a woman commander. Like
just the same as being shouted at by any other commander. It's just a commander.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of international men, that was also really healing. The idea that you can express your masculinity in a way that is. And international women who felt, or non-binary people who felt more masculine coded, they could express their masculinity in a way that was healthy and not be at war with, the gender wars. Why do we need gender wars?
Absolutely.
We're fighting enough already.
I think that's something very useful. I'm really glad you brought that kind of thing up because it's needed. It's like you said. It's just all you hear if you go online, especially as a young person, male or female, but like you say, there's a lot directed at men, politically directed at men, ideologically directed at men.
I think at women as well. Yeah, and there's a lot of liberal feminism which is really harmful to women and kind of alienates them as well, and kind of sells them a dream which isn't true. That's not women's liberation. You can't the whole self-care industry. You can't self-care your way out of an alienated society. You have to fight for your community and what you believe in.
And you saw a lot of that taking place around you.
Yeah. I mean, I was separated from the internationals quite early on because I got chicken pox for the first month, and then I was quarantined, which was a really difficult time, probably one of the hardest times I've ever, one of the toughest things I've ever been through, because I didn't speak the language, I had no phone for security reasons. The last message I got from my family was essentially disowning me, and lots of angry messages from my mum. I wasn't around anyone who was from the same culture as I was. I was experiencing culture shock physically and mentally because the water's different, the air's different. And I was just confined to this hospital bed in dead summer with chickenpox everywhere. Like I couldn't even open an eye. Mosquitoes, bed bugs. But then I met one of my commanders, Shahid Baran, the martyr. His name was Baran. He basically was one of the first men I'd ever met that represented that positive masculinity, that positive male role model. And he is still one of my heroes to this day. It's like he joked, kind of like in prison here, and I was like, yeah, it is a bit. And he was like, don't forget, you have to resist everywhere. You have to resist, and even in here, resist. And it's like, what? what are
a
you gonna
beautiful
do?
thing. He took the time to come and see, like, because obviously he was a commander. He
Yeah.
must have had a lot to deal with. And,
Oh yeah,
but he had that much
yeah.
heart and will. We took the time to tell you that.
He's one of those true believers that come in once and very rarely. And you know, obviously with communists, there's a lot of negative associations with the word. He is a complete. He and three other commanders who might go on to talk about absolute positive image of that word. You know, strong, resilient, comfortable in their masculinity. Like they loved playing with children. They were just as happy in the communes talking to the mums and the aunties as they were on the front lines, completely calm and relaxed in the face of challenge. Absolutely stern when they needed to be, but at the same time with so much love. And they were some of the toughest men on the planet.
Do you think it was that love that took them that level above?
Yeah, because you can be, you know, you can be the most ferocious warrior out there. You can have, but what are you fighting for? What's driving you? You can only run on hate for so long. Whereas you can keep on going for love for till the end of time, basically.
لچی yazın arzmanan khinin akhajindari cihil wishinin gerbi wargahbin azine minin لچی yazın arzmanan khinin akhajindari cihil wishinin gerbi wargahbin azine minin. I want to say, but I have to keep asking you. So you're in hospital. You've just arrived there. You've just seen all this stuff. There's obviously a big war going on. You want to get involved as you can, and then you're sequestered in hospital for a month. You've got support around you. You start to adapt to the people around you. Maybe how was your progression out of there and development to getting to understand what you're around?
I suppose trial by brimstone. Like I was thrown right into the deep end with non-English speakers, and my language skills developed. I met I started making friends, and I realised very quickly, like I'd had such a negative view of myself for so many years. When you're actually tested in really challenging situations, and I remember one of my commanders heavily saying, "It's in war that you truly see yourself." I have the ability to empathise and understand people and get on with people, and I'm a friendly person, so I started making friends really quickly as soon as I realised that. And yeah, I learned all their stories. So like my friend Khaled, you know, he'd been on the regime side for many years. He was an Arab, but
so he'd been fighting for Assad.
He was a child soldier for Assad, yeah. Oh. And then obviously the revolution happened, and you know that had changed his viewpoint, as well as got him out of that really scarily bad environment. You know, Assad being a dictator and this feeling of oppression. I met him in hospital. We're still friends to this day. You know, I met other Helene, the martyr Helene Anna Campbell, who's the British woman who was killed. She was in hospital the same time I was, and she came back and visited me throughout my stay, and we formed a friendship. And she was also very inspirational for me, as well as multiple other people.
I've heard nothing but good things about her. She clearly was a very inspirational person, as all the people you spoke about were. And what happened after hospital? What were you seeing? How was your life there once you were better and recovered?
My chickenpox calmed down. I found out I had gallstones. So all the stuff that the NHS had failed to pick up for years, they found within like a day of testing.
In a war hospital.
Yeah,
under a
I know,
like fledgling, not even state
Literally. So, like, I remember going for blood test in the morning at 9 o'clock, having a cigarette and a chai with the guy who took my blood test afterwards while we were waiting for the results. And within like half an hour, he had the results for me. And he was like, "You've got an autoimmune disorder. You've also got an infection." And then just walked over to the place where they do the x-rays or like ultrasounds, found out I had gallstones. I think that just says a lot about the collapsing NHS. Like
They
this.
really looked after you.
Yeah, and they really looked after everyone, and unfortunately, they don't have like the capabilities that the NHS do, the resources, which is shocking how quickly. um, but yeah, so I went back to work in the communes in the society. And I will say, at first, I didn't really get it. Like at first, I was still reading from that culture shock. I didn't understand why they were asking me questions about why did I eat like this or why did I do like this, and going on all these demos and political meetings. And I felt I wasn't doing anything. Then it kind of you wake up and it clicks. You wake up one day and everything just seems about 20 times more sharper and more beautiful. Like I remember waking up and being like, just by me being here, just by me talking to people, just by me encouraging people to come out on these demonstrations or be in the street, just by me visiting all these families and talking and having these discussions, I'm playing a role in lifting up the revolution.
Just one day you woke up and you were like, I'm
Yeah,
part of it.
it's kind of like I don't know, wake up moment. And I remember it was a really beautiful sunset, and I was walking back with a friend, and there was like this jasmine growing over a wall. And one of the little girls, because I'm really good with kids, animals, and yeah, like seniors, they're my jam. There was this kid, and she was walking back, and I'd seen her coming. Every time she'd run up and give me a big hug. This time she did it, and I just felt more alive in that moment than I had done in years. But this is life, and life is beautiful. And then obviously the news from the front lines kept coming back, and it was worse and worse. And I knew that my friends and my international friends were fighting, and I wanted to be part of that, so I pushed to go. And then eventually did my military training and completed that. And surprised myself by completing that because I never thought of myself as someone who had the strength to do that. But again, in war, you truly see yourself.
Yeah, the result.
Yeah. And I worked hard at it because, I'd come from, I had health issues. I had,
That would take someone out for a year over here with the stuff that you were dealing with.
yeah. And, I had health issues, culture shock. Like, I was in a completely Kurdish and Turkish battalion. I was picking up the language fast. I have dyspraxia, so I'm very clumsy. But I had to put in like twice as much work than other people. But that's just what I had to do, and I did it. So I put in those extra hours just holding my clash like this to build up my arms, or aiming and taking apart it and putting it together again. I did put in all the extra hours.
That's what got you through.
Yeah, and just knowing what I was about to do and fight for.
I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be coming with questions, but I just need to process like
Take as long as you need.
It's just the resolve that you had is impressive. Is all I can say.
Yeah, looking back on it, I'm not sure how I did it, but I think that's the thing. And later on, I went and studied psychotherapy because I was so fascinated I'm still fascinated by people and how they work. People are so capable of doing incredible, beautiful things. It's just that avenue given to them in society. People most people are capable of doing really wonderful things. Like it's that self belief. It's those avenues. It's those opportunities. So like we talked about the universities cutting Mickey Mouse courses in arts and anything that doesn't make money, anything that isn't maths, finance. How many brilliant composers are we losing? How many beautiful artists? How many people are? How many of the people in these council estates living in overcrowded and cramped conditions could invent something really wonderful that would benefit society?
There's just no time for that anymore. Everyone's just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So you went through military training. Don't have to go into much detail about that. What was your next steps after that?
After that, I was held in a battalion because there was flare-ups going up around in Serikania, which is a city in a very small city, and the Turkish state had started shelling, and ISIS were coming back basically.
That's what you mean by flare ups.
Yeah, yeah. Like there was a lot of back and forth, and bombs and warplanes started going over more and more, and we had to build bunkers and sleep in the bunkers, because the attacks were increasing, and then the invasion of Afrin happened. So Afrin is a city in the west part of Rojava, when the Turkish state um, used its forces to invade. And I desperately wanted to go and support my comrades there, but also, what I was fighting for. And it took a while because at first they said, news reports were coming back of what the Turkish army were doing to women, like Barin Kobani, who was beheaded and horrible things done to her, and like this writing from the Quran written on her torso, which they tossed aside, which even from an Islamic standpoint is completely, haram. And it just made me so angry, and I felt so powerless, and I just wanted to get there. So eventually, like, I managed to sneak in on a convoy of women that were going, and mums from the communes that were just going to support, along with a friend. And yeah, that's when I saw Anna for the last time, and Elena Sanchez, Shahid Legarine, who was also sadly killed. I'd also seen quite a few friends actually for the last time. And then we went into the city, and if you've ever seen a city fall, you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that was quite an experience.
And you don't have to go into any more detail than that, but just for people who haven't seen the city fall.
Yeah, so Afrin had been like, just 1 second, my throat is dry.
Of course.
Give me a sec. Please don't look at me while I'm trying to drink tea because I'll spill it.
Sorry?
Okay. Yeah, so Afrin had been like a kind of like the model of Rojava because it was largely untouched by the Islamic State. So all the communes were really well built. They were really well functioning. It was really beautiful. It wasn't like the rest of Rojava. I found quite beautiful in a kind of slightly decaying way because obviously it had been bombed and had years of destitution under the regime. But the beauty came from the people. But Afrin was really beautiful. It was like a Mediterranean city in like the south of Italy. There were women walking around with like t-shirts, and it was quite a lot of Armenian women there as well. And it was I think it was part of the route. So Serikani is where Kemal Ataturk, the leader of Turkey in the 1920s, death marched loads of Armenians when he was committing the Armenian genocide, all the way through Afrin to Serikani. So there's lots of Armenians throughout. I mean, one of the most kind of really eager to dispel is that it's a ethno-nationalist Kurdish movement. It's not. It's really multicultural. And in Afrin, there was this sense of multiculturalism. Very historic. They had like these old Hittite lions, stone lions, and the entrance that had lots of history. And when I first got there, the mood was hopeful. People were like, "We can win this. If we just keep on hanging on, we can win this." And me and my friend were just running around doing all kinds of things. Like, yeah, but we went to go and kind of help out the hospital, which needed guarding, which was where many of the civilians were being kept, and the school in front of the hospital. And yeah, gradually as the days rolled on, the mood got more and more, what's the word?
Bleak.
Despondent, yeah, bleak. People started to realise that not only were we losing, that they were putting out all the stops. They were going in really, really heavy and as hard as they could, and attacking as brutally as they could to destroy people's morale. You know, at one time, like my friend, she was, oh my god, just shut up, because they put these noises on the warplanes to make the noise even worse, and then would just dive bomb without bombing. Sometimes they would dive bomb and bomb, sometimes they wouldn't. So you're constantly living under this. And I had to console a lot of mothers and women in the communities, just try and keep their hope up.
Because just to give some like context sort of to the situation, the People's Forces there, the forces that were defending the people of Afrin, they what kind of equipment did they have compared to, and what kind of capabilities, and what did they come from compared to what they were facing?
Yeah, so a lot of them had come from fighting ISIS, which were kind of equipped, really well equipped with mysterious funding. But now they're facing a NATO force with warplanes and drones. And so they do things like light cigarettes at 6:30 p.m. with the drones circling above them. Then that was it. The FSA, I still don't know what that stands. Can't remember what that stands for. But that was the forces that Turkey was using on land, and they were being absolutely brutal with decimating bodies.
Some stuff about like even some of the ISIS that have been completely defeated having fled and being recycled back into that.
Basically, yeah. Basically, so like loads of ISIS fighters that people had seen them go up to the border of Turkey, the border like opening with the ISIS trucks going inside. A lot of the faces were recognisable from the time of ISIS, but now they were back with more equipment, with the support of air power, which is so powerful. And if you're in a city and there's air power, it's very hard to, unless you've got extremely strong anti-aircraft equipment, it's very hard to fight back against. And that's why the IRA signed that peace treaty, because the British government had just, got into so much high-grade air power.
And the people defending the city didn't have any kind of
no
power or air defense.
No, it became increasingly fractured and disorganized. Like me and my friend just running around. There were loads of other people like that. And we ran into this really cool mum from the commune. Had like her son with her, but she had like 2 loaded pistols. She was determined, they're not going to take the city.
And this was just a normal woman who lived in the city. Her mum had lived in the city her whole life, and just And that's the kind of people that it took.
Along with the soldiers, along with I can't remember the death toll of the YPG and YPJ soldiers, but it was in the thousands, and civilians as well. And they were deliberately targeting civilian places like the hospital, the areas around the school, civilian places.
Sounds a lot like what's happening now in Gaza. That kind of situation.
Yeah, and again, air power. When you up against very high tech air power in a city, you're just like sitting ducks basically, unless you've got some really strong anti-aircraft missiles. And I think the worst part was when it hit a civilian area really badly, and the cemetery was full. So we had to go to this bare patch of land and bury, children there. And I think that's when like a huge part of me, something a little bit broke inside of me, and I just it's not your fault. Should I repeat the whole thing or just pick up?
Go on, it's just a light out, people can deal with it. Just say what you want to say.
So yeah, we ran out of, the cemetery ran out of spaces, so we just had to bury people in like a scrub of land, including children, and there wasn't enough room. And I remember helping to bury the bodies with just a shovel. A little part of me broke, and just this rage came. All this rage I'd been holding back for years just came soaring out, and I knew I wanted to go further, basically. Then on the final days before the city, people were fleeing the city, and they were shooting and targeting people fleeing the city. we were told, get out or you'll either die or be court-martialed. So me and my friend reluctantly left the city on foot with thousands of other people. We walked for miles and miles and miles. And I remember us walking up a huge mountain, me and some dads from the commune, and they were being quite, what's the word? What's the word? You know when you're quite tranquil about something,
Tranquil, that's the word.
even if it's bad.
Blasé.
Not blasé.
And I know tranquil is enough.
Yeah,
can
yeah.
understand the way sometimes some old dads just tend to be in those kind of
Yeah,
situations.
yeah. Even though they knew they had lost, and we all turned and took one last look at the city, and I said, we'll get back one day. We'll get back one day. And then we carried on walking. And I think to this day, thousands of women have gone missing. Or sorry, cut that. 'Cause that's not true. Okay, that's not true. So I better scrap that. Hundreds of women.
Don't worry too much about that stuff. I'm sure the Turkish state will have a lot of facts that they want to.
Yeah, true. I mean, quite potentially, thousands of women could have gone missing in Afrin.